How's it going, people? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be talking about cheap and underrated exotic cars you can buy for under £30,000. I appreciate during a cost of living crisis 30k is quite a lot of money, but relative to other exotics these are quite cheap. And I don't know why people don't talk about them more, so we're going to go through them right here, right now. If you like this content and want to see more like it, hit the like button, subscribe as well if you're new here, and without further ado, let's get into the video. Lots of trouble, usually serious, is the famous abbreviation for Lotus, which refers to the older Lotuses that were renowned for having major problems, often with their sketchy Rover engines or equivalent mechanical issues. In the mid-2000s, they switched that up by bringing in a bunch of far more reliable Toyota engines, but in terms of keeping the brand hyped up, it might have been too little too late. For this reason, I think the Lotus Elise has never gotten the real kudos it deserves as the perfect version of a reasonably priced and almost exotic roadster, built to handle incredibly well and turn heads while doing it. The base Series 3 Elise in particular offers such a reasonable entry point into this market, with its 1.6 litre inline-4 engine that makes 134 brake horsepower, taking it from 0 to 60 in a perfectly average time of 6 seconds, but as I already mentioned, acceleration isn't really this car's bag. The Series 3 dropped in 2010 with orders starting for the 2011 model year, and it's not a million miles away visually to the Series 2, minus a few modernisations and the larger headlights. This 1.6 litre base model was actually discontinued in 2018, but the more powerful 1.8 litre supercharged example has carried on through to 2022, where the final edition has been released. I'd be really interested to hear in the comments down below an answer to two questions. Firstly, are you a Lotus fan? And secondly, do you prefer the Elise or the new Emira? I want to know if there's a difference between Lotus fans and non-Lotus fans in which one they'd pick, and I'll tell you what I would have chosen at the end of the video so I don't sway your decision. And yes, because it is a baby exotic from Lotus, it does commit to the Lotus theory of simplify then add lightness. Given the stripped out simplistic interior from standard and the minuscule proportions of the car, it actually only weighs 866 kilograms, which helps with that fun factor. These start at around the £28,000 mark, which is a lot of money when you consider you get an F-Type for the same kind of cash, and for £30,000 you get a 2017 model with around 15,000 miles on the clock. That engine is beautifully reliable and economical too. Check out Lotus owners forums and people have proven to manage 50 miles per gallon out of it. Sadly, Lotus replacement parts can be quite expensive, so do be aware of that. I was incredibly lucky earlier this year to drive two different 981 Caymans, both the S and the non-S base car, and I was very impressed by both, and thanks to both the subscribers that gave me those cars to drive. Of course, the Cayman S is that little bit quicker, tighter and more aggressive, but for under £30,000 the non-S is a real contender. I know everyone wants a 911 or at least a slightly different badge on whatever Porsche they get, like an S, GTS or something like that, but honestly the non-S Cayman should not be overlooked as a cheap access point into more exotic car ownership. It comes with a smaller 2.7 litre flat 6 engine that makes 271 brake horsepower, which you get from 0 to 60 in 5.4 seconds, slightly quicker than the Lotus but maybe typically more exotic. If you want to get a fuller understanding of why this car is worthy of a place on this list, definitely check out the video linked in the iCard and in the description, but I'll summarise some key points for you now. It is a beautiful looking car, helped by the fact that it was designed by Tony Hatter, director of design for Porsche, who's also been responsible for beauts like the 993, the RSR 918, the 991 Touring 50th Anniversary Edition, and helped to turn the Carrera GT concept car into the real thing, as well as getting involved in the 911 GT1, which is a ridiculously cool list of cars. That's partly why the design language of this car mirrors that of the 918. To drive, it is lovely. If you're in the market for a starter exotic, it gives you enough power but not too much, great handling while not being too aggressive, great luxury while remaining understated, particularly on the interior, which is a lovely place to be, while at the same time not being a million miles away from a VW Golf, so it feels very familiar. If I had the extra money, I might go for the S, but the reason I would do that is based on spec, not necessarily to get the extra power out of that engine that it shares with the 3.4 litre 911. These start at around £22,000. Over £30,000 you'll get yourself into a 2014 model with around 40,000 miles on it. Problems with these are typically small but annoying, like the bonnet latch failing or the wing motor dying, but engines are known to be pretty strong. The muscle car market in the UK is tiny compared to many other regions and countries, particularly the US of course, but that only makes them more unique, which is why I think the most recent generation Ford Mustang GT is hugely underrated in the cheap exotic car space. It probably isn't underrated in other countries, so apologies if in your market it's all the rage, but when you ask people about exotics under 30k, you're more likely to hear the likes of F-Types, BMW M4s and BMW M2s than you are a Mustang. This 6th generation Mustang comes with a 5-litre V8 engine that produces 410 brake horsepower, which will get it from 0 to 60 in 4.6 seconds, and being the 6th gen, it comes from a long and rich history. This was the first Mustang to be sold and marketed on a global scale, moving outside of its native US market, which is part of the reason why I think it's quite underrated, as it's a new entrant into our exotic car space. I actually visited the Mustang Owners Club the other weekend to get some in-person research, and what can't be overstated is that because it is reasonably priced, owners can now start to modify them in a similar way to how Mustangs historically have been in the US. From small simple modifications like window louvers to full-scale overhauls of the cars, which seems to be a core part of Mustang ownership culture. So if you're moving on from modifying cheaper cars, the Mustang might be the next step on the ladder for someone with a bit of extra cash. If you're not keen on a gas-guzzling V8, then you could always go for the smaller engine options like the 3.7-litre V6 and the 2.3-litre EcoBoost inline-4, but for me to have the proper beating heart of an American muscle car, you have to go for the V8. In financial times like today though, maybe an EcoBoost might keep your pockets a bit happier. You'll get into a Mustang for around £25,000 at the bottom end, and £30,000 will get you a 2016 example with around 25,000 miles on the clock. Non-engine electrics have provided the main source of issues for Mustangs, but it's worth noting owners have complained about just how expensive these can be to fix if they go wrong, so a good warranty might be worth the investment. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you are, a quick reminder, do hit the like button and subscribe as well. If you're new here, I'd really appreciate it. 1,000 likes with the same video again at under £20,000. I can go lower than 20 as well, so 1,000 likes, we'll do 20k, we might go lower than that afterwards. The Jaguar XFR-S is easily the rarest car on the list, with just under 140 on the road today in the UK, which means that if you're in the know about them, you'll likely be pretty impressed when you see them in person. But that's just it. Not many people even in the car world seem to be aware of them as much as, for example, the Project 8, of which there are 5 times fewer on the roads. And though the Project 8 is incredible, it's actually not ridiculously quicker than the XFR-S, which hosts a 5-litre supercharged V8 that produces 542 brake horsepower, which you get from 0 to 60 in 4.4 seconds, versus the Project 8's similar block that makes 591 brake horsepower and gets to 60 in 3.3. In a recent video I spoke about the equally beautiful Jaguar XFR-S, which shares the same engine as this, but also a very similar overall formula. The XFR-S is effectively a 4-door saloon version of the XFR-S sports car and vice versa. That means you get a more aggressive overall body and track, with the wing on the rear clad in carbon fibre, which you'll also find in other places around the car to add lightness. The wing, splitter and diffuser have also been tuned specifically for aerodynamics and increased downforce for high speed cornering, meaning you can theoretically drop the kids off at school, then hit the track to set some rapid lap times. And what's incredible is that both the XFR-S and XFR-S were tested at the Hockenheim short circuit in Germany, where they pulled pretty much the exact same lap time, which was then confirmed by a test on the Motor Trend Figure 8, which both cars finished within a tenth of each other on. This means the reason why you choose one car over the other is simply based on preference and practicality requirements. This is the most expensive car on the list, as it starts at our £30,000 limit, with relatively high mileage for such an exotic beast. The engine is actually known to be very strong, which is good news, but don't forget it's a rare exotic, so common problems will never be common, only a few people will have had them. With this in mind, aim to buy one with a good service history that has been treated as the exotic that it is. Taking the top spot because it's an absolute beast is the Audi RS7, which is actually a fastback version of the RS6 at its core, considering it sits on the exact same platform, shares the same engine, similar exterior stylings, and the same interior too. I honestly believe that RS Audis are often underrated, at least outside of the RS6 and RS4. The TTRS, for example, is unbelievably fast, and the Mark II in particular sounds incredible, but there's not an insane demand for them. The RS5 similarly is ultimately a very strong opponent to the M4 and M3, but again doesn't get quite the same attention. The RS7 suffers from the same issue, hence it's also very rare, with fewer than 450 of them on the roads here in the UK compared to its main competitor, the much newer BMW M8, which has already got almost 500 out on the roads. It comes with a ridiculously powerful 4-litre twin turbocharged V8 producing 596 brake horsepower, which will get from 0 to 60 in 3.6 seconds, which is pure insanity. That literally means it's only 3/10 slower to 60 than the Project 8 and has 5 more brake horsepower, yet you're buying it for 1/5 of the price. Speaking of price, these start at around £27,000, so for £30,000 you'll be looking at reasonable mileage, but there are plenty within this price range. I could bore you to death with the incredible pieces of tech that underpin this car's performance, but you can just take my word for the fact that it comes with some proper kit. More interestingly, I think it looks really mean, and the fastback design is very unique. Plus the sound is absolutely mental, particularly with the right exhaust on it to bring out just how brash that V8 can be. All that pulled together, if you get the Dynamic Plus pack, the top speed is limited to 190 miles per hour, which is unbelievable speed for the money, showing the benefit of buying an Autobahn cruiser. Transmission offers the key and most headache-inducing problems with these, the gears getting stuck or the clutch slipping as well. Also, I saw that some owners had problems with start-stop systems failing, but in general it's known to be pretty dependable. So I said I would answer the Lotus questions, by the way, and yes, I'm a massive fan of Lotus, as you probably know already, and secondly, I would go for the Elise over the Emira. The Emira is probably a nicer overall car, but if I'm buying a Lotus, I want something that's stripped out, fast, and built for the track, basically, so I'm going for the Elise. What would you go for? Let me know in the comments down below. And now that you've watched this video, I want to go and watch this video next, because this one goes through all of these supercars you can buy for under £50,000, and I think it's pretty good. And subscribe as well down here.